And we are live. Welcome, welcome everyone. My name is Niki Lopez of Niki Lopez Creative, and you're watching The Circle, where every Tuesday, 8:30 to 9 p.m., I'm interviewing artists, creative activists, social entrepreneurs, nonprofit organization, people doing great things in the world today. And today I have a special guest back on the show today. We have Andy Ruffner from the World's AIDS Museum. Thank you for being here, Andy.
Thank you. It's so great to be back with you.
Yes, absolutely. So Andy is, for those who may be watching, this particular show for the first time, is the Director of Education for the World's AIDS Museum and Educational Center. So, yeah, Andy, just kind of diving right in for people who've never heard about the World's AIDS Museum and Educational Center. What is that, and why is it important?
Okay, well, we're an actual museum. We're located right here in Wilton Manors, which is right outside of Fort Lauderdale if you're not local. We're very close to downtown Fort Lauderdale. And it's a museum that's been open for 5 years to highlight the history of HIV so that people can learn from that, and also to decrease the amount of stigma that there is around HIV. We still have a lot of HIV happening in the United States, particularly here in Broward County and in South Florida. Our 3 counties, Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade, are always in the top 5 for new infections of HIV. So we want to make people aware of that. We do a lot of education out in the schools, and we have exhibits here in the museum to help people understand the history of HIV and hopefully learn from it. There's a lot of parallels in the HIV story to what we're going through right now with coronavirus and COVID-19.
Awesome, awesome. And I've just taken a few moments to acknowledge we have G online. Thank you for being here. We also have David online. Thank you for being here. He said, hail up, so he's saying hello. So, just really briefly, we're live on Niki Lopez Creative and the World's AIDS Museum, as well as YouTube Live for the first time. So thank you for being the one to kind of, spearhead that multicasting. So we have a comment from Jean, and we talked a little bit about this earlier. G said, love the opening of the new exhibition back in January. Congrats on a beautiful event.
Well, thank you. That's a really fun thing. I was glad to be able to be here tonight, actually in the museum, so that I could share this with people, because we had a most wonderful collaborator in this, Niki Lopez. So I'm sitting in front of this exhibit wall. There are 5 different walls here in the room, and each one of them tells a different story. This particular wall is the story of AZT, and it's set up to look like a prescription pad. I'm really bad with the camera here. So you see the RX up at the top with the name, and then written out the actual prescription the way a doctor would have written that back in 1987 when AZT was first approved by the FDA. So it says AZT 1 capsule by mouth, PO, 5 times a day. And then we've got the times listed there, if I could keep moving my bald head around. So 7 a.m., 12 noon, 6 p.m., 10 p.m., and 3 a.m. That 3 a.m. dose was really interesting because in the early days of AZT, we really believed that people should interrupt their sleep and get up in the middle of the night to maintain a therapeutic level of the drug. And it was a really hard regimen for people to follow. On top of that, AZT had a lot of toxicity that a lot of people had to deal with in that. So, and right beneath that, I want to highlight, I don't want to take it off the wall because I'm afraid I might not get it back on. That is a Niki Lopez original. The drug, she made a sculpture of the drug, and we have examples of those throughout the exhibit that she put together for us. So we're real proud of the exhibit and how it turned out. The museum focuses a lot on people's personal stories And that's how we try to make the history of HIV come alive, is understanding how it affected individuals. So what this represents is a framework that people can begin to tell us. And we've already had that in the short time that we were open with the exhibit in February and the first couple of weeks of March. People that visited would often tell us, you know, their personal experience with these medications and that type of thing. So we're looking forward to reopening this to the public and having it available to them.
Awesome. That's amazing. So we have with you. Hello, everyone. Amazing museum. Please support. Thanks, Nikki and Andy. Absolutely. What's some of the things that is covered in the museum?
So the main exhibit in the museum is called the Chronology of HIV. That's our permanent exhibit, and it's in the main gallery. It starts actually in 1900 and follows the story of HIV up until 2014, which was when the museum was opened. And the way that it's organized is that it has these different articles, if you will, within a time frame. So we'll have a panel of, say, 1981 and 1982. And in that panel, it'll have the highlights of stories. So the big thing that happened in 1981, for example, is the New York Times article talking about there's a rare cancer that's being seen in homosexuals. And so you have that first linkage between HIV and gay men in that. And then what the original founders of the museum did, which was really brilliant, is that they also included on all of the panels a list of the cultural events that were going on during that time. So, for instance, in 1981 is also the year that Princess Diana got married to Prince Charles. And so it talks about that and kind of puts it in context for people. So as you go through the exhibit, there's all these different cultural prompts. And in the early days of HIV, especially in the United States, a lot of the notoriety around HIV was this sort of discovery of all these people who had HIV, the most famous one being Rock Hudson in 1985, when that came out that he had HIV. So that's how that's organized. And then we have other artifacts and things that people have donated. We have Magic Johnson's basketball jersey, for example. We have a really interesting thing. They came out with these HIV/AIDS trading cards, and they're actually baseball cards to help educate people about who the pioneers were in HIV and who were the newsmakers in HIV. And it's really an interesting thing to flip through there and see what was in there.
Absolutely. And I just have a comment. Lisa, it's great to see Andy Ruffner live streaming about the history of HIV medication. Absolutely. And then we have G. She said, first time I heard of AIDS is when Rock Hudson died. I didn't even know who he was, but I remember people being shocked.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because one of the things, we do a lot of tours of high school groups and trying to make this relevant for students today, you know, teenagers today, they look at that and they say, who's Rock Hudson? And the way I try to explain it to people is I think he was a real paragon of sort of white male masculinity back in the 1950s. I mean, his name was Rock. Yeah. So it was just a really big moment when that came out that he had HIV, and by extension, then the understanding that, oh my God, Rock Hudson, this guy that was in all of these romantic comedies with Doris Day, was actually gay. So that's another big part of the museum, is the way that that all evolved over time as well. And then here in this gallery, we have different exhibits that we rotate in and out. So we put this exhibit up, Medications Then and Now, and we started on a plan that we're going to have a different exhibit every year. So the Medications Then and Now exhibit is scheduled to be up through the calendar year of 2020. And then in 2021, we're going to launch a new exhibit on women and children and HIV and kind of collecting some of the histories of that, because some of that history is being lost. We've virtually eliminated mother-to-child transmission of HIV in the United States. So a lot of services that we had and innovative programs that were done to support and help children who were born with HIV are no longer necessary because we no longer have kids being born with HIV. So we want to be able to collect that history and preserve it so that people can learn from it. And again, what we're going through right now with coronavirus is a great example. I wish a lot of the public health people could come here to the museum and see some of the things that could have been done differently with coronavirus if we had learned the lesson from HIV.
Awesome. And we'll just, that kind of segues into our next topic, because one of the reasons why we're doing remote right now is that the nation is on a stay-at-home mandate. The state of Florida is on a stay-at-home mandate. So we're just all trying to protect ourselves and protect the elders and protect those who are who can be most at risk, you know, for this virus. What type of impact does this coronavirus have on the museum or, you know, institutions like that?
Yeah, it's funny. I love your opening because I haven't of the circle because I haven't fully taken on my museum identity yet and being a creative person. But it's one of the things I've really enjoyed about my work. And one of the things that I think I've really learned about that is what it's like to try to work in the creative field. And in culture and the arts. This is a cultural institution. We do a variety of artistic things. We do several art shows throughout the year because it really gets at understanding HIV more on an emotional basis. And so I think there's a lot of controversy about supporting the arts through this. And a lot of arts institutions operate on really tiny budgets. And that's certainly the case with the museum. We've only been open for 5 years. And it's not the easiest sell, frankly. You know, people have to kind of try it out and then they get it. And they really do support us in that. So a lot of cultural institutions do a lot of work with a little bit of money. And when something like this happens, it really interferes with our stability because we depend on money coming in, you know, on a pretty regular basis. For us here at the museum, the most significant thing was our biggest fundraising time is from February through April during the Florida AIDS Walk. So we raised the money that we raised during that time in the walk is doubled by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, which is in a really amazing position for us to be able to be in. And we get a lot of our operating budget from that. So when this thing happened and right in the middle of that time frame, that really disrupted our ability to make that money and throws into question, you know, how are we going to be able to keep the museum afloat? So we've been working really hard to raise money. And we're working on, someone mentioned earlier, I saw it pop up about maybe you could do virtual tours. We're absolutely putting that together, different stories and things to help people understand more depth about HIV. We started a series on the Ryan White program and telling the story of Ryan White, the little boy from Indiana who had HIV, got it from a blood transfusion and faced a lot of stigma. And that resulted in the CARE Act to be sure that HIV people would have coverage for medications and things. That CARE Act bears his name to this day. So Ryan White, anybody who has HIV or works in HIV is very familiar with that. And so we try to tell that story. So, but I think in general, all the arts and culture, all these kinds of organizations, especially when they're small,
Mhm.
And they really provide a lot of outlets for people we're really easy to connect with here at the museum. We do a $5 donation, $5 suggested donation for getting into the museum. We do a lot of programs during the month to bring people in for community forums and art shows and different things like that that are all free. We get food donated and that type of thing. So we really create community here.
Mhm.
But there's not a lot of money exchanging hands in that. And ultimately, we do have to pay the rent.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I have a question. I'm just bringing a graphic. Do you have there's some little feedback. So if people want to donate, you gave a graphic, but if you could kind of like walk us through the process if people are trying to donate to the museum.
Yeah, so this is our text to give program, and it's really the quickest and simplest step. Sometimes when you show a URL or an internet address, it's 8 lines long. So this is really simple. To give to the World AIDS Museum, you just put in the phone number 954-371-0969, and then text the word "give" in the box, and then it will take you out to the internet, and you can choose your donation and then enter your credit card number and that type of thing. So it's a very simple 3-step process. And the thing I really want to drive home here is because the gifts are doubled, I'm feeling like I'm on a PBS show for a minute. And we're gonna get back to Downton Abbey in a minute. But the thing about it is, I think this is a big question for all arts organizations right now and any kind of social service. Should we be asking for money right now? Isn't that rude to ask for money when there are so many people who have had to apply for unemployment? And certainly, we do not mean for anybody to put themselves in financial trouble by giving to the World AIDS Museum. But if people can, it really means a lot right now because of our situation with being able to double the amount. So the amount really isn't that important. It's more the connection, the building of community, and the idea that you're helping to sustain something that we really should be proud to have here in Broward County. We are the only museum dedicated to documenting and remembering and empowering people about the history of HIV in the United States. And we truly want to become a World AIDS Museum, be a world player in the museum and cultural circles. And we're getting better and better and better at that. This exhibit is a great example of that. We will be able to produce a lot of programming around this and go from there.
And, I just also want to kind of point out and underline it that though, we're going through this pandemic, people are home, people are stressed out. Some people don't know they're stressed out. They're dealing with trauma. Like, this is a global thing. But then the arts is still important because people are home turning to the arts. They're turning to music and TV and karaoke and all these different things. So the arts is important. It's helpful, it's healing, it's entertaining, it's uplifting, it's educational. So it's definitely something that I feel that is essential just with everything else, because even once we get past this, we still have to live, we still have to move on. And there's still, there are people who are at home or who have lost jobs, but there's also people that are still employed. So if we're able to contribute where we can, that keeps the people that still have jobs, that keeps the organizations that are still giving to the community the ability to give to the community. So I think it's really important. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been thinking about this a lot as I've gone through this, because I'm having to ask friends. One of the things I'm getting ready to do is I'm getting ready to threaten people that I might twerk online, and no one wants to see that happen. But the thing is that, you know, I want our society to go on. I want our society to continue to grow. I want our society to get better. And I think the thing, I was writing about this on Facebook the other day, the thing that compels me about this is the kids. You know, because these kids in Broward County Public Schools, I've done a lot of work with them. They are amazing, these kids. The conversations that we can have with them, they're so together. They're so much better than I was when I was in school, in terms of being mature and respectful. I'm just really lucky that what goes around did not come around to me on that. But the thing about it is these institutions need to be there for them. You know, it's just, you want to preserve our way of life, and life is going on for them. You know, they don't have a choice. They're going to school.
Yeah.
And it's great. They're adapting, and we all need to adapt. So, yeah.
I just want to give a quick shout out. I see Trina Slade Burks from No More Starving Artists Foundation online. So she's also agreeing with, you know, the art's important. So definitely thank you for being here. So I have a couple comments and a question. So David has, is it possible to change the stigma of AIDS being an LGBT issue? Is it just me that thinks that it's still somehow HIV positioned in the world? Or is it just me that thinks it's still, that's how it's positioned in media, that is an LGBT issue versus, you know, it's an everyone issue?
Yeah, I think, you know, this is a real dilemma about how stuff gets reported, and I don't know whether y'all have been watching on the news. I mean, it's hard to miss on the news, but the past couple of days they've really started talking about race disparities in coronavirus, and particularly in cities like Detroit and New Orleans. And we have to do both things at the same time here. So no, the coronavirus does not discriminate. And HIV does not discriminate. They're very similar that way. You can pick it up from, you know, whatever the behavior is, you know, out in the community. So if you're not protecting yourself, you know, you're more vulnerable. The other piece, though, is that coronavirus and HIV follows other health disparities. So health disparities like things that disproportionately affect gay men in the case of HIV. And coronavirus is just another example of a health disparity that disproportionately affects African Americans or other people of color because of all of the other health disparities that we have. It's not rocket science. It's not like we would have a different experience with coronavirus than we have with anything else. If you don't have great access to healthcare because of systematic racism, sexism, homophobia, whatever it is, that's going to cause problems. So we always have to fight to balance those two things. We need to get the message out to people who are disproportionately affected to help try to bring those numbers down. And we also have to recognize that that can be another way of re-stigmatizing something that shouldn't be stigmatized.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have a couple of comments. So this is a funny one. Lisa Mills is suggesting that you do twerk. That might be
well,
interesting.
I watched a video on it, Lisa, and I, you know, have been practicing in the privacy of my own home. So we'll see.
David said, would love to hear about setting up the text to give for our nonprofit. Is it expensive to set up? What platform are you using that allows you to use this method?
Whoa. Okay. You're giving me a lot more credit. I'm just the social worker, touchy-feely, do-gooder guy. I don't know about any of this underlying infrastructure. But if you want to get in touch with me through the museum, I can get you the people that could help answer that question.
Absolutely awesome. And then Lisa says, if you haven't been to the World's AIDS Museum and Educational Center, you're missing out. You have to see to truly appreciate the dynamic education in play. Absolutely.
That is true.
And so we have a question from Nicholas Dantop. If we make a donation on the World's AIDS Museum website, will this be applied to the AIDS Walk fundraiser too?
Yes, I believe so. That is, any money that we bring in during this time, we're able to transfer it. To be safest on that, by the way, if you look us up on the Florida AIDS Walk page, our flagship team raising money for the event is called the Happy Heinies. And if you look up Happy Heinies on the Florida AIDS Walk page and make a donation there, it will most definitely be doubled at that point.
Awesome. And then we have G. She said, I just gave a modest contribution, really want to see the museum continue to exist to educate and protect our community.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. What are some of the stigmas that people have coming into the museum that maybe they have a change of heart once they get to the museum and see everything there? Or what are some of the comments, I guess?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that I hear from especially younger people, we have this wonderful professor down at Broward College that she sends all of her students up here to do this project where they come to the museum and they have to just write a 1-paragraph response to what they saw here at the museum. And we can always tell when she's done it because all of a sudden we get all these kids from Broward College. And the majority of them really don't have any information about HIV/AIDS. They have no connection to it. They don't really have a personal stake into it. Every once in a while, we'll have a student tell us that they, had a family member, that kind of thing. But for the most part, they don't know anything about that. And I think they're really struck by the enormity of it. One of the most dramatic pictures that we have is of the NAMES project, the quilt, when it was displayed for the last time in its entirety in Washington, D.C., and it stretched from the Lincoln Memorial all the way to the Capitol building on the National Mall. And when you see all of those quilt panels that are representative, they were intentionally designed in the dimensions of a grave to help people understand the enormity of it. And they really come away just humbled by it, if you will. I mean, they really just had no idea the extent of what had happened with HIV. And the other thing is, I think a lot of times people aren't aware of all the triumphs we've had in HIV. And that's another thing for coronavirus. It is, science really won on HIV. We have made incredible strides. We haven't found a cure, but we've brought the mortality rate down very, very low. And so there's no reason in the United States that anyone who gets HIV has to die from HIV because we have the coverage for it and we have the medications for people to live indefinitely.
Wow, okay. And let me see, we have a couple, we have a question. It says, Eric, greetings, Eric and the Jazzers from Fort Lickerdale via the Boogie Down Bronx, checking in and sending support and blessings. Stay safe, peeps.
I love it.
He said, "Oh, Niki, love it. Oh, always love your show. Thank you so much." That was definitely a really cool hello. And speaking of, are you native from Florida, or are you a transplant as well?
No, I am from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I moved here about a year and a half ago in June of 2018. And, the alarm clock went off and my partner and I, we were over 50. It was time to get out and get down here to Florida. And we're actually working on learning to play Mahjong right now to totally take on the older Floridian gestalt here, so.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then also, because you also have, I don't know if we spoke about this as yet, the World's AIDS Museum has a storytelling project where you record.
Correct. Yeah, it's called Until the Last Story is Told, And so it's an oral history project where we are collecting people's stories about any aspect of their history with HIV. So you don't have to be HIV positive or living with HIV to be involved in the oral history project. It's anybody who's had an experience that they'd like to share with us. And we're collecting those. Our goal is to have those transcribed and have them as a database that people can use to understand more about different aspects of HIV. So for example, we really want to get stories about people's experiences with AZT in our medications exhibit. And we have some of those already, but we really want to broaden and increase the diversity of voices on that.
Awesome, awesome. And what's your connection to World's AIDS Museum? Like, what brought you there? What keeps you there? How are you connected to the museum in that way?
Yeah, so I started working in HIV back in 2006, which I did not know when I started working in HIV that I had a partner that I'd been with for 15 years, and I knew he was HIV positive from the beginning of our relationship, but he actually passed away right after I took this job as a manager for an HIV testing program in a hospital emergency room in Cincinnati at the University of Cincinnati. So that's when I got started in it formally, but it's always been a part of my background ever since the very beginning of HIV back in the 80s. I was in high school when, the things started back in 81, 82. And I remember when they developed the HIV test in 1985, I didn't get tested right off the bat. And I actually have lost 2 partners to HIV, one in 1991 as well. So I've been through it a lot, and I thought I didn't want to stick with it, but I came down here and got involved in some volunteer work because I was kind of sitting around the house being too much of a beach bum, and my partner was like, "You need to go out and get a job or something." So I got back involved, and once you work in HIV, there's a real culture to it, and it's hard to work other places. I was telling somebody just today, I was having an argument with one of my student interns about rectal fluid, and there just aren't a lot of jobs that you can have that kind of a argument in. So
Okay.
I'm unfit for work elsewhere.
I get it. Cool, cool. What do you do with all this going on? Do you have any self-care practices or things that you do to kind of keep you grounded or keep you sane with all what's going on and what you're dealing with work and everything like that?
Yeah, I think that the main thing that grounds me right now is getting out and moving. So I run pretty much every other day. I'm lucky because I live within walking distance of the beach, so I can run over the Hollywood Boulevard Bridge and be over on the beach, and with all the other people that are staring at the beach from behind the fence. I feel like a dog, like laying in front of the door, like, like, let me in. And so I go and I look at it. I make sure the ocean's still there every other day, or I go out and I ride my bike. But really, that's the thing that keeps me the most sane in this. And then, a glass of wine or 2 in the evening doesn't hurt either.
Absolutely, absolutely. For someone who may see this and they want to get involved, they want to volunteer, what are some ways? I know you mentioned about donating. What are some other ways that people could get involved with the museum?
So one of the things that we're going to be looking at is ways to, if you have an idea about a story that you'd like to tell for your oral history project, please do get in touch with us. Again, you can find me on our World AIDS Museum website, which is worldaidsmuseum.org. And just shoot me an email. that you're interested, and then we can talk about ways that we might be able to get that done. We don't have it fully up and running yet, but we certainly can do that remotely with people's ability to do videos on their phone or those kinds of things. We can convert them into the platforms that we're using here at the museum. So that's one way. It's interesting, I do have 2 new volunteers that started with me in the middle of all this. So I have a young man who is an English major who is looking to get some experience doing writing professionally. And so he's writing up some background histories for the virtual museum tours that we're putting together. So he's writing the copy that will accompany a series of images and things from the exhibits, as well as other photographs or other things that we put together from research that we're doing. So we always need help with research and those kinds of things. And if you don't have money, but you have friends that do, helping us with fundraising that way is also a great way. So those are just some of the ways. Once we get open back up, we always need people to be at the front desk and greet visitors to the museum and learn how to give the tours in the museum as well.
Awesome, awesome. So what's next? Is there anything scheduled coming up? There was a comment about a virtual tour, but I'm not sure if you're on a mobile device or like a laptop. I don't think you'll be able to give a tour tonight, but you said that the museum is working on a possible tour.
Yeah, so what we've done is we've created a series of short videos that tell little pieces of the story. So the videos are only about 3 minutes long. Mm-hmm. And we focused on stories that relate back to coronavirus. Because that's a really timely thing. So as we finish those, we will be posting them to our social media pages, and we'll also be sharing them through the Florida Association of Museums.
And the Pride Center says, "Keep up the great work. World's AIDS Museum is such a valuable part of our community." Absolutely.
Well, and that is high praise from the Pride Center. We love the Pride Center. They're a great ally in all of this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, that's pretty much, so yeah, any final words before we wrap this up?
Other than my hostage message, don't make me twerk for it.
That might be a great campaign.
Yeah. So, but we have until April 30th to raise the money to hit our goal. So it would be great to get some additional support that way. And please do check us out on the web, follow us on Facebook, all that kind of stuff. And when we do reopen, come see us. It's a great experience.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And I see David, amazing platform, Niki. When I muted the volume to take a call, it started closed captioning so I could read along. Absolutely. Yes. So we're all trying to figure out ways to either expand what we're doing, shifting what we're doing to accommodate what we're going through now and keep these things going because it's important. It's important to us. We know it's important to the community. For those who may be interested, I'm using StreamYard, and I'm still working on getting back online with Instagram. So those are some challenges, but this is my first time doing YouTube Live as well. And I really appreciate, Andy, you coming on and sharing your work and sharing the museum and sharing why it's important to the community. I think sometimes we're just so used to seeing things there, we may not sometimes know the importance of it or how it connects. Like you made a lot of connections between HIV and AIDS and the coronavirus that we have now, as well as some similarities in some of the stigmas and disparities. So those are all important stories, and I think it's worth everyone taking a listen to. So, and with that being said, I really appreciate everyone who is here on the call live. I'm just going to pop back up how you could donate towards the World's AIDS Museum. And you said, Andy, between now and April, what is the date for this to be doubled?
So April 30th is the target end date. So we want to try and get all of the money in that we can by April the 30th so that it can be doubled.
Yes, so if you're watching this on the live, if you're watching this on the replay, please donate. You could text, you could go online to their website. I posted the links to the World's AIDS Museum. Between now and April 30th, those funds will be doubled. So give what you can, share it, connect to the museum. There's volunteer opportunities, there's storytelling and story documents and opportunities. And if you're, thank you all for being here live. We're live on Niki Lopez Creative. We are live on the World's AIDS Museum. And we're also live on the YouTube channel for Niki Lopez. So this information is really important. I hope this is inspiring, motivating to someone. And if you're watching this, please share it. Please tag a friend. Please send a message and share this link. Someone needs this information. Someone's waiting to get motivated, and you could be that person to give that push. So thank you again, Andy, for being here. And I will see you all next week. I'm here. This is The Circle, and I'm here every Tuesday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.